So welcome everybody. I'm Alex Jacobs. I'm first and foremost Chinese medicine practitioner, acupuncture, massage, herbs, qigong, dietary therapy. I've always had an ambition to learn it all, and part of the reason why I'm able, I think, to bring everything together in this way today is because I've had all those different perspectives, as well as having lived in Taiwan for a number of years and studying Chinese to fluency, both ancient and modern Chinese. So, and having brilliant teachers throughout the years as well, it's given me a really interesting perspective on things. So, let's start with a question to work out maybe something that I think that we all get confused about. So the first question is, what flavor should you eat in the spring? Put your hand up and I'll
Sour foods?
Sour?
Yeah.
Okay. Put your hand up if you think that's reasonable. Sour in the spring? Okay. Why? Someone said liver. Okay. What does that mean? It's the wood time of year? Yeah, but what does it actually mean? I'm not giving anyone a hard time, but like when we ask this question, why? Like, what does it actually mean? What are we actually doing? What does sour actually do to the liver or to wood or to the spring? Replenishes the qi of the liver. What does that mean? Okay. Hopefully I'm going to give you some ideas today. No, and by the way, it should be, because it's not sour, and you're going to see that. And anyway, okay. So this is what we're going to do today. As I was just saying before everyone came in, hopefully by the end of this talk, you are going to be able to understand flavors in a really clear way. You're going to be able to apply them to cooking, blend them in cooking, understand what they do, the core of what they do in an immediately experienceable way. And you're going to be able to also tie them to the seasons too, within 90 minutes. So hopefully we can get through it. It's going to be a bit of a roller coaster. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Huangdi Neijing, to some passages that you may well be familiar with, but you will have missed something. And you will have missed something because of the way they get translated. And I'm going to then apply that and show you how that applies to flavor and how it applies to processes in the body, physiology, pathology, and the seasons. During this process, you're going to discover that actually, who's a 5 elements practitioner? Put your hand up. Right, okay. This is going to be a particularly interesting talk for you, but for everybody. Because one of the things, I've always been very interested in the 5 elements, because I think that for certain things like, for example, facial diagnosis, really understanding stems and branches, things like that, you need to understand the 5 elements, and you need to understand them in a very technical way. And one of the things that I always found difficult is that, do you not get the feeling sometimes when you talk about the 5 elements? We just talked about it, spring and sour, right? That we seem to be talking about things on a number of different levels at the same time, and sometimes those different dimensions get confused. And so that we can say something, and then it's like, well, it seems like we can say a lot of different conflicting things at the same time, and what we're actually saying. And I'm going to help sort that out today. Okay, so that's another thing. It's quite ambitious talk. And then at the end, we're going to go through the 4 seasons, right? Plus the 5th one, okay? It's 4 or 5. And we're going to go through, so I'm going to give you some practical examples. And one of the things, the ways this is confirmed, all this information, is it is there within Chinese culture and festivals. So if you look at what Chinese people eat at different times of the year, in their festivals, you will see they conform exactly to these principles and to these ideas. And they're confirmed. So it's confirmed from the Neijing, it's confirmed from practice, it's confirmed from your experience, and it's confirmed by the Chinese and Chinese cooking. And by the way, here's another secret. All Chinese cooking adheres to Chinese dietary therapy principles. Not just special dietary therapy, right? We're going to see that. Okay, so I'm really into Yang-Sheng. Simple definition of Yang-Sheng today is Chinese medicine self-help, Okay, I'm really into empowering my patients with self-help. And I just wanted to say that one of the things about Yang-Sheng that's great is that it's very unifying. This conference is about meeting points. I think it is the meeting point of everything that we do. It's the kind of the glue and the theory and everything that ties together acupuncture, qigong, massage, dietary therapy, and herbal medicine. And so I'm really into bringing us together. I'm both an RCH, I'm the RCHM president, an RCHM member, and a BAcC member, and I think that, you know, together we're stronger. It unites styles, okay? So as I said, we're talking about 5 elements, but this is equally applied to TCM, this is equally applied to, you're gonna learn the core theory of the Shang Hanlun today as well. So you're gonna learn a lot. By the way I talk about this, you can talk directly to your patients as well with this without really a lot of prior knowledge either. And it unites communities, and this is one of the key things with us, is that, you know, we think of ourselves as Chinese medicine, or do we want to bring 5 elements in TCM together? We want to bring acupuncture and herbs together. But we're even bigger than that. What about all the people who do East Asian martial arts? They have our philosophy. The Chinese diaspora in the UK, Chinese cooking enthusiasts, people who like growing our own herbs. This is our wider community, and we can bring people together with the Yang-Sheng. So, okay, so we are, this is what I was talking about just before we started, talking about, you know, why do we eat sour in spring? Why in autumn do we eat spicy? What does it mean? And how come there's a common Chinese phrase, in autumn, eat less spicy, right? Surely spicy is the flavor of the lung and autumn, right? Is that not a bit confusing? Okay. So, getting flavor right is the key to dietary therapy. And I've got almost every dietary therapy book there is in English, and I've got a pile in Chinese. I love all of them. However, when they come to talking about the seasons, they all get confused. And you'll see today why. So I think that there's also a high level of dietary therapy, which a lot of people don't get to. And the difference is, you know, there's a kind of a clumsy approach, which is just a list of ingredients and a list with TCM properties, and then a list of recipes with those ingredients. And it's almost in a way like Western nutrition. You've got blood deficiency, eat all these things, right? Where we say, you know, if you've got vitamin deficiency, eat all these things. You know, it's not quite the high level. The high level is when you're creating specific dishes which make you feel a specific way afterwards and can target specific problems in the body, right? Very much like herbal medicine, and a lot of my approach here is informed by herbal medicine. So this is Yang-Sheng. Very quickly, Yang means nurture, nourish, take care of. Sheng means life in this context. Techniques using Chinese medicine principles to promote health that anyone can use. So just a bit of background on me. I've been interested in this for 20 years. This picture on the right is a university in Taiwan where I studied Chinese for 3 years. This is my main teacher in Taiwan is a doctor that I met, very extraordinary person, and he opened a restaurant shortly after I arrived, which was a 24 solar term restaurant. The solar terms are 15-day periods throughout the year, which are like mini seasons. So each of the 4 seasons is divided into 6 mini seasons, and they've each got their own climate and applications. And he precisely applied these principles so that the menu of the restaurant would change every 15 days to match this 24 solar terms. It was an amazing amount of work, and it completely tired him out, and he had to close it. But it was incredible. So this is when I was in my early 20s. This was, you know, I'm entering this wonderland of Chinese medicine. I can see this high level. There is a high level to this, and hopefully you're going to see a little bit of it today. And these are the things, as I said, that, you know, through all these different lenses, I had, these are a selection of the Yang-Sheng books I've got in Chinese. Huge amount of this information just not translated into English. And a lot of it's not translated into English because it's not in textbooks. It's in popular books. It's in the culture. You know, one of my teachers once said to me, it doesn't matter how great a herbalist you are, you can always be outclassed by someone's grandmother. So there's a lot of information that just isn't in the textbooks. As I say, I've learned the language, I've immersed myself in the culture, I've got all my clinical practice, I read the text directly, do multiple therapies, and I've had great teachers. And so there's not anything here necessarily in and of itself that is novel, but putting it together, I think, is where suddenly you see something. It was a little bit like that moment in The Matrix where Neo just suddenly sees through the Matrix and catches a bullet in the air and he sees all the code. I had that kind of feeling, and hopefully I'm going to give you that feeling today. Okay, so what are we talking about? How are we going to actually understand this? So this is the really, really key thing. So this is all about understanding what we call solar cycles. What does that mean? It means any cycle generated by the sun, which is two cycles, the day-night cycle and the seasonal cycle. As we all know, the sun is the most profound thing that affects all life and existence on Earth. Yeah, we have a day-night cycle where it goes from cold and dark to hot and light, and then back to cold and dark again, hot and light, and this oscillating process. Same thing with the seasons. Now, this is, it's so funny in a way that this isn't the first thing that we say about almost every scientific subject, because it is the one constant that we've had since the beginning of evolution, since the smallest amoeba all the way to us. We have had to handle with the fact that there's been a cycle of going from hot to light and cold to dark. So this is the most fundamental thing that is hardwired into us on all levels. And it's something that's really important to reflect on. It's the true meaning of the yin-yang symbol. That's why it's so important and so core. It's not just a nice philosophy. It is us. We are made of this. We don't survive if we are not fundamentally made in response to this. And that's how core this is. And it's why also, I was talking about, talking about we were proper medical professionals. There is nothing more fundamental and scientific than this. Okay, so this is how amazing the Chinese were. In ancient times, when the Chinese were writing something down, they were writing it on bamboo slats, and they would write it by hand. And if they got it wrong, they had to throw away a slat. And so everything they wrote down was incredibly important. The order they put it was incredibly important because it took a lot of effort. Chapter 2 of the Neijing, and repeated again and again and again, they introduced these concepts which you won't see in books, or you see them, but you don't realize that they're really important concepts for various reasons, because we don't isolate them. They are the essences of this 4-stage period of going from cold and dark to hot and light and back to cold and dark again. And they're the 4 stages of that Taiji symbol, right, of the yin-yang symbol. So, for example, in winter and midnight at the bottom, we've got this one which is called Cang, storing. So you can translate them in many ways. We're going to go into them in more depth later. This is the nature of winter, right? And a good example of that would be hibernation. Right? Things go into hibernation, go into this storage phase. Everything in nature is doing this as we see it outside, and we have a very clear physiological response, which I'm going to explain to you in an incredibly clear way when we get there. Going into spring, it goes into growth, and then everything is growing, right, up to a point where everything matures, and you get this character Zhang, maturity. And then you go into autumn, where everything then gathers back in, and then goes to store. And I'm explaining exactly what that means. So where is this in the Neijing? Chapter 2, they have these, you may well have read these ones, right? They're the descriptions of the 4 seasons in the Neijing and what you're supposed to do for your Yang-Sheng in those seasons. And by the way, a lot of people have said that the Neijing is primarily a Yang-Sheng text. I think that it's primarily a Yang-Sheng text, but that is our medicine. And that's how you'll see this, when you see the logic of the Yang-Sheng. Okay, so at the end of each of these little chapters on the little sections on the seasons, it gives you a list of advice, and then at the end they say, the 3 months of spring, this is the Tao of nourishing Sheng, right? This seasonal dynamic of spring, right? Seasonal dynamic, and that's Sheng growth. Summer is Jiang maturity, autumn is Shou gathering, winter is Tang storage. Interestingly enough, should be spelt with a D, D-A-O, but the word nourishing there is yang, right? And so to nourish Sheng, which is the same Sheng in Yang-Sheng, it's the same Sheng in the Sheng cycle, by the way. They say that's the Tao of Yang-Sheng. So that's the first time we see the word Yang-Sheng in the Neijing. But then summer Yang-Sheng is Yang-Zhang, and autumn Yang-Sheng is Yang-Shou, winter Yang-Sheng is Yang-Tang. Okay, so I'm not going to go through these. We don't have a lot of time. I do a longer course where I go through these in detail. But just to give you an idea, these are what the sections say about the season. So for example, in spring, they say this period is named throw out the stale, heaven and earth both grow, Sheng, and the myriad things flourish. And then you give the advice like sleep late, rise early, so on, so on, so on. These are the correspondences of the spring qi, the Tao of Yang-Sheng. Importantly, go against this and you harm the liver, and then they tell you what will happen if you don't do this. If you don't do the Yang-Sheng of the spring properly, you'll have cold transformation in the summer. So it gives you a disease name. By the way, later on in the Neijing, they have lots of chapters with disease names in them, and they all correspond to, if you don't do the Yang-Sheng properly, you get this disease. So they match up quite closely to those, to the failure of doing the Yang-Sheng of each season. Okay, so I'm not going to go through each of these in detail, but I just wanted to show you them. So it really comes back to this. What is this, and what is the physiological response in us to this? So here's a clue. In chapter 64 of the Neijing, you might have seen this before, particularly if, I know Roishi more because it's in your book. In spring, the qi is in the Jingmai, right, in the meridians, the primary meridians. In summer, the qi is in the Sun law, which is, the microcirculation, the little capillaries. In late summer, the qi is in the muscles and in the flesh. In autumn, the qi is in the skin, and in winter, the qi is in the bones and the marrow. Something to do with depth here. Deeper in winter, more superficial in spring, right, and summer. And what you've got is from deep in winter, going out to the most superficial in summer, and then coming back down again. So later on, these are not so often quoted, but they're really important. You get descriptions of what happens in spring. In spring, the qi of heaven begins to disperse into the open. The qi of earth begins to flow out. What is frozen breaks open, the ice melts, the water flows, and the jing are passable, hence the human qi is in the mai. I love the way it just kind of goes from nature to the body and back again, right? What's happening in nature in spring? Well, everything that's frozen, the spring water, they unfreeze, and then the water starts flowing. Same thing in our meridians and in our blood. Our circulation slows down, and the circulation in the exterior kind of slows down in the summer, and everything goes interior. And then in the spring, everything breaks open and then starts to flow back into the exterior. In summer, the jing are full and the qi overflows. So it's overflowing into the exterior. It enters the sun law, the capillaries, more in the exterior, which receive the blood, and the skin is filled and replete. Skin is the exterior, right? So they're telling you. It's just spelling out exactly what's happening. Then in autumn, the qi of heaven begins to contract, right? Contracting, going inwards. The solia obstructed and the skin is pulled together tightly. So it's not just going out and going in, it's going out and opening. And then it's going in and closing. And then in winter, everything is covered and stored away. Blood and qi are in the center. They are attached to the bones and the marrow, the deepest place, and they penetrate the 5 zang. So what are we talking about? Interior, exterior. So if the red color is both your yang qi and your fluids, because the fluids follow the yang qi, and the yang qi is contained in the fluids. They kind of go together. Which one is summer, which one is winter? Summer on the left, okay. Why? We talked about this, okay, that's great. They described it, it says in the Neijing, that's not good enough an explanation. Why does that happen? Why do all your yang qi and your fluids go to the exterior and everything opens up in the summer? And why does it go to the interior in the winter. So you're talking about the external temperature? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it does. It's a response to it. Okay, so because we haven't got much time, I'm just going to tell you. So what happens? The danger in the summer is getting too hot, oversweating. And so, not oversweating, getting too hot. And when we're too hot, we sweat, right? To be able to sweat, we need to have our fluids and qi at the outside. And it needs to be relatively more open. And so the biggest danger to us is overheating, so sweat is important. In the winter, the danger is getting too cold. And so all the fluids and qi, the most important part of the body is our organs. So the fluids and qi need to go into the internal organs. Now, this is not a controversial thing. This is well known in Western medicine, not this cycle, but the fact that the body can reapportion its blood flow to different areas of the body. And it's done through vasoconstriction and vasodilation and a number of different other mechanisms, which I'm not clever enough to completely figure it out yet. But it's known, right? This is not controversial. By the way, I told you, but I'm teaching on a number of different levels here, because everything I've said so far, I haven't mentioned any concept which is controversial in any way. And you can talk directly to your patients with this, even though this is also very high level, because you'll see that it's also the Shang-Han-Lun logic. So, the left is summer, yang and fluids on the exterior, it's wholly more open. And on the right, winter storing, yang and fluids on the interior, the tsoli are more closed. So everyone's familiar with the tsoli. It's kind of the things that open and close within the body. Sometimes it's called the space between the flesh and the muscle. I thought originally it was pores, and then I Googled it, and apparently pores don't open and close, so I've stopped saying pores. But it's something like the pores, right? Something that opens and closes. I think it's a more complex mechanism, because something definitely does close down, and something definitely does open up. And the main way that you see the opening and closing is through the ability to sweat, right? So if you're more open, you'll sweat more. If you're more closed, you'll sweat less. Right? Which is why the Chinese talk about sweating a lot, particularly in herbal medicine. Interestingly enough, so we'll go into the etymology of these characters. They're incredibly important characters in Chinese language. This word jiang means, I've translated it as maturity, I think is the best way of talking about it. But a related character which got the same component also means open. And by the way, this one, tang, storage, also means closed, right? It's all there in the language, which is why also you can get a lot just by understanding the language. So now, if you're familiar with the Shang-Han-Lun, it's the most important text on herbal medicine, but the logic often doesn't get taught explicitly, even to herbalists. So it's very important to know, but there's a very basic framework. The Shang-Han-Lun talks very simply about things. Treatise on cold damage, if you want to know the English name. It talks about things effectively in 8 principles. So it diagnoses disorders into interior and exterior, right, which we just talked about. Heat and cold, which we also just talked about, right? So summer to winter. Excess deficiency. And then yin and yang. And the yin and yang bit really is the areas of the body. And one way you can think about it is the areas of the body that are, and the functions of the 6 division names, you know, Tai Yang, Xiao Yang, Yang Ming, Xiao Yin, Tai Yin, Jue Yin, right? Now, in a very simple way, we can apply that. We already know now, for example, that in the summer, you're supposed to be on the left, and in the winter, you're on the right. If you get the right one in the summer, there's something going wrong, right? So we can already start thinking about pathology quite easily with this. This pathology, so this is it. This is the most important diagram you're going to see today. Winter is the one below, we all agree. Summer is the one above. So what's spring? Very simply, spring is whatever takes you from the one below to the one above, right? Which is sheng, or growing. Right? Sheng means expanding too, by the way. So from the inside, that warmth is expanding outwards, going out to the exterior. Well, what is autumn? Well, it's that one to that one, right? Gathering. Gather in. Go down. By the way, what's the direction of the liver? what's the direction of the lung, right? Now, do we understand that? By the way, out and up are related in Chinese medicine, and in and down are kind of related. So when we say in and down, like for example, the most internal root organ is the kidney and it's below, right? And the most kind of external one that governs the exterior, they're up here, they're above the lung and the heart. So in some conceptions, the head is considered a part of the exterior. So there is that kind of, we know, for example, a lot of heat, it's going to rise in the body, create pressure, which is going to go upwards, like high blood pressure, for example. Okay, so interestingly enough, I mentioned these solar terms, 24 little mini seasons. Each of them have really cool little names, which epitomize that mini season. And by the time they get to autumn, they start talking about dew. Because what is dew? Dew is fluids condensing, going down and into the earth. Just like our fluids are coming from the outside, condensing and going inwards. So when you see dew on the ground, which you're probably starting to see now because it's getting cold enough, that's a sign that autumn is happening, but it's also reflecting the fluids in our body. Remember chapter 64 of the I was just very fluidly connecting natural processes like springs and streams to what's going on inside of us, because what we're seeing outside is happening inside. And then later on, one of the solar terms is called frost descent. So the dew gets colder, becomes frost, right? And what's happening inside, our fluids are getting colder, slowing down, freezing up. And so this is related to the skin. So what are we talking about? So these 4 seasonal dynamics, once we understand them and how to work with them, and we can apply them to flavors, which we'll do in a moment, then you'll see how we can promote them or deal with them. Okay, so Sheng is spring, waking up the yang fluids move up and out. Jiang is about maintaining your yang and fluids at the exterior, totally and more open. There's a danger that you either get, that those fluids get damaged. And if those fluids get damaged, you get heat stroke. Right? So it's about maintaining it out here. Shou is about gathering the yang and fluids inward and allowing them to condense. And Tang is about, which is winter, maintaining yang fluids on the interior, the totally and more closed. We close down. And by the way, this is happening day-night cycle as well as seasonal cycle. And not just that, it's activity and rest. So right now I'm up here, and I'll test your knowledge, see if you can understand this. I'm giving a talk. What phase am I in of these, physiologically? Jan, absolutely. I'm in the summer phase right now because I'm up, I'm active. I'm having to maintain all of my yang and fluids and energy up here and connect with everybody going out here. Before the talk, I was kind of, getting myself ready, going through preparing. That would be the Sheng, And then tonight when I go to sleep, it will be Shou and Tang. And Shou, for example, is all about sleep hygiene, right? Because you've got to gather in and let yourself calm down. Otherwise, you're too excited and you can't sleep. Think about a kid that gets overexcited, right? They just get too much of the Jiang and there's not enough Shou, and they just can't bring everything in. Okay. So we can say, oh, hold on a second. Well, we know that the I Ching also talks about elements, right? So wood is spring, fire is summer, autumn is metal, winter is water. Okay. So now, they then, by the way, very importantly, the 5 elements, big subject, and people here, I'm sure, will know a bit more about me in different aspects. The 5 elements is a much older concept than the Yellow Emperor's Classic. Possibly 1,000 years prior, there were texts, and there were lots of different kinds of versions of the 5 elements, and they all got integrated together and everything. And so you can't say, for example, I don't think you can say in the I Ching that there is one interpretation of the 5 elements in the I Ching. I think there's some different competing ones. However, what you can say is that the I Ching definitely thought this about one theory of the 5 elements. And it is absolutely clear in the I Ching that from one perspective, one of the ways it talks about 5 elements is they are derived from these, the 4 times. They call them the 4 times, sometimes translated as the 4 seasons, but it's better to call them the 4 times because they also refer to the day-night cycle, 4 times of the day-night cycle. So the five elements are derived from this in this conception. Okay, I just gave you the answer. Right. So I'm going to get you to tell me the flavors that promote these four different functions. Right. So in spring, the challenge of spring is to go from in and down and closed to up and out and open. You all saw the word spicy up there, absolutely. But it's obvious, right? Spicy makes you sweat. Spicy makes you warm, right? Immediately you can understand that. Okay, so let's see if you can get the next one. This one's a little bit more, it took a little bit of thinking. So summer is about holding the fluids and yang-qi out here. So what flavor not only maintains the stability of your fluids in the up and out, but also has a filling action in the body, raising of the pressure in a sense. Salty. I gave you a bit of a clue with raising the pressure. Salty flavor, well, salt raises blood pressure. We have to be careful if you've got high blood pressure. Oh, God. I've got to remember which ones I do. Okay, anyway, top one is salty. So, autumn, right? In autumn, we've got to allow the fluids to condense, come in, gather, and go in. So what flavor does that? You just saw it. Sour flavor, okay. This is, if you know herbal medicine, that's absolutely the function of the sour flavor. You can stop a sweat with a sour flavor. And I've got a sour drink downstairs on my stand if you want to come and drink it. It's a lot nicer than it sounds. But one of the ways that this is explained, if you have something sour, your mouth puckers, draws in, and that's what it's doing to the whole body, all the tissues of the body. It draws in and gathers. So, for example, the tea I've got downstairs, it gathers zongqi of the lung. So it's perfect for autumn because we're gathering that qi in. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's summer. So we had salty there. Okay, that's great. Now, interestingly, what flavor drives down and in? If you're a herbalist, you should know this one. But we don't talk about it like this in herbs, by the way. Nope. Bitter. So, if you're a herbalist, you learn bitter. Bitter dries, bitter goes down. Actually, bitter goes down and in, and it may actually even go in more than down. It goes both. If we want to drive something out of the body through the urination or through the bowels, we use bitter flavor in Chinese medicine. But it clearly goes down and in. And it's very interesting. This will also solve, if you're a herbalist, the mystery of why huangbai, one of the most bitter herbs, is said to tonify the kidneys. Why does bitter tonify the kidneys? Because it goes down and in. But these are experiential. You can come today and have the sour one, and you can feel the gathering aspect of it. By the way, salty flavor, it's one of the main things we use to rehydrate the body if your fluids get damaged, right? We use salty and sweet flavor. These are not things that you need to, they're not theories. You can test them straight away. Spicy flavor, I mean, it makes you sweat. It's not controversial, And a bitter flavor makes things go down. Bitter flavor will make you go to the toilet quite often, right? So, that's interesting. Are those the flavor associations you're familiar with for the 5 elements and the seasons? I'll come to it later. Let's try and work these ones out first. Does that correlate with what you were taught? Is it actually the opposite? Right. Why is it the opposite? We're going to find out today. So, let's say, hold on, what about the 5 flavor associations, 5 elements? So, the Neijing has a number of ways it talks about flavor. It does talk about the standard 5 flavors that we talk about, and it uses these words. It says, for example, in Neijing 4, it says, its flavor is. So the Eastern green color enters into the liver, its flavor is sour. So I'm not trying to counteract what you were told before, right? That's true. It says that in the Neijing. So the heart, its flavor is bitter. Spleen, its flavor is sweet. Lung, its flavor is spicy. Kidney, its flavor is salty. Neijing 5. So look at the language here. Flavor generates the organ. Wind generates wood. Wood generates sour. Fire generates bitter. Earth generates sweet. Metal generates, sweet generates the spleen. Spicy generates the lungs. Salty generates the kidneys. Okay, generates. What does that mean? Generates. Enters. We also have this one. Sour enters. Spicy enters. Bitter enters. Salty enters. Sweet enters. These are the 5 enterings. Okay. So we've got generating, entering, and some kind of correspondence. So this is one of my aha moments. I thought long and hard about, because I'm not satisfied with just learning a rule. I want to know why, and I won't stop until I find out why. And I just constantly ask myself this question. Why is it these colors? Why is metal white and not silver? And why is water black and not blue? Have you ever wondered that? Anyone got an answer? The answer I'm going to give you today is pretty compelling. Okay, it came to me the first time was when I was looking at my herbs in my herbal dispensary, and I realized this. Do you see much blue in there? Do you see much silver in there? No. The colors are colors you find in nature and particularly foods and ingredients. That's the first clue. And then I was thinking for a long time, I'm like, okay, well, these associations, so they make the color associations, but really in the context of the seasons. So why? Okay, so spring is green, and summer is red, and late summer is yellow, then it's white, and then it's black. Is there something in that sequence? If anyone's ahead of me already. So 5 elements required to color found in foods. Yes, under the sequence of the colors. Yeah? People get that? Ripening and rotting. Exactly correlate to the sequence of the seasons. Spring, green, ripens to become red, ripens further, become yellow. When mold grows, it's white, fully rotten, black. So this is one thing that I've never read in a book. It just came to me. I don't know if it's the reason. I think it's pretty compelling reason, to be honest, to relate them. But by the way, I think it's more than that, because I think that once you start to use the logic I'm giving you today and apply it, what I'm giving you is a whole pile of little threads. And once you start pulling on these threads, things will come loose and you'll see a lot more and more and more. And suddenly things will crop up. I'm teaching a full year course on this at the moment, including the applications. And I looked at all the dishes for autumn, and I pulled out the most common ingredients used in autumn. And they actually have the properties that you need. They actually work. And then I just was making my slide, and I put all of the pictures on of those ingredients up. All of them were white. So it's more than just this. There's something inherent about nature that produces these colors within the correspondences of these seasons. So there's something very interesting, but this is a very compelling reason. Now, it doesn't stop there. We can do the same thing for flavors.
But it's interesting when you look at, for example,
Sorry, can I give you the
it's interesting when you have a look at, for example, when a tomato becomes red, and then it corresponds to summer, and it's the good time to eat it. So when do we eat a rotten tomato then?
Let me get to my end of my talk, because what you'll see is that you'll have more answers to that question, I think. No, but it's a really good question, because I like the fact you're thinking, because it's that kind of thinking, it's those kinds of questions that get us to this place. Because the Chinese were smart. You know, one of the things I always like to say to people who are skeptical, I'm like, do you think that geniuses only exist in the West. So if you don't think that, where are the Chinese geniuses and what were they doing throughout history? They were doing this, right? Because we know the Chinese invented all those amazing inventions, but some of the greatest geniuses were doing this. They were incredibly smart. And so when we extend that thinking, we respect how smart they were, and we're trying to get to that level. When there is a high level, we will find the answers. So, yeah.
For example, charcoal black can stop a vessel from bleeding if you are in nature and you have a problem in that kind of situations. So here again, you find what you're explaining to us.
So it's just saying that the charcoal black can stop bleeding. Yeah. Once we get into this, we can go on forever. So, but you're absolutely right. It's great to actually put these things together. Okay, so interestingly enough, Sheng, which is the flavor of, the seasonal dynamic of spring, also means unripe, right? It's all there. All the connections are there. Let's take it further. What are unripe flavors? If you bite into an apple that's unripe. Sour, right? What else could be an unripe flavor? Bitter. Spring is sour. Summer is bitter. They're the first part of the year, the unripe flavors. What's a ripe flavor? That's the next one, right? What's spicier, a green chili or a red chili? Red. Why? More ripe. Spicy is a ripe flavor. Salty, my current working theory is that we all come from salt. We all come from the sea, right? The salt is the substrate. Salt is the earth. So in a sense that, in that rotting and ripening cycle, everything goes back to salt, and then we all come out of salt. So that's the way I look at salt. But clearly, is this not what we're talking about? Okay, so now another way to talk about it. So I don't want to be too confusing here because what we're building here is two completely different conceptions of the 5 elements, right? One where we talked about these seasonal dynamics, right? Which is the first one. It seems like the opposite of that is something where in the Neijing they use 3 phrases. It says its flavor is, it enters the organ, and it generates the organ. So I think there's a sense that the liver is generated by the spring, right? And the prevailing flavor of the spring and color of the spring is green and sour, and therefore that generates the organ. And that's why it corresponds in 5 elements. That's different from saying the prevailing climate in spring is going up and out. And if we want to match that in the body, it's spicy. And so what we find is that climate generates the opposite to balance the thing, right? And the greatest examples of that, for example, in hot climates, we get coconuts and watermelons, which are perfect to cool us down, right? And in cold climates, we get aconite, which is the hottest herb. Right? So there is something in the logic of nature that does that. That the climate and that there's an opposition which helps us. And there's another way of thinking about it that, say, the prevailing dynamic of spring is going up and out. So we need, if we're going to generate an organ, we need to do something opposite direction to that to kind of counteract it. These are just ideas. But what I can say, going back to, we'll bring it back to a simple level later, but it's just an interesting ideas. The point to recognize is that the Neijing talks about flavors and elements in 2 different ways. And I think it's useful to think about these 2 different ways. So these are the associations you're familiar with: spring wood sour, summer fire bitter, autumn metal spicy and salty. And they're about generating new organs, about entering new organs. And then these ones are about the dynamics of the seasons and what's happening to help us match the body match the season in terms of its internal physiological processes. So this is what flavor generated by the season and flavor which promotes the underlying dynamic of the season. These are two different ways. And once you start realizing that and realizing that when we talk about 5 elements, we often get those two confused, you can start sorting things out in your mind and being much more technical, much clearer about what we're talking about when we talk about the 5 elements. Now, you might ask, well, this second one, do you just make that up? It sounds great, but is it in the Neijing? Well, it is in the Neijing. So before we get to the evidence for it, when we talk about these two different versions of the 5 elements, we can contrast 2 kinds of seasonal advice. So we come back to that original question. So for example, in spring, we can do something which corresponds to the nature of spring, and it carries the resonance of spring. So you can eat sprouts, for example, because sprouts are that time of the phase of the year where something is just going into life, right? You can eat sour because sour is, I would say, it's not just generates the spring, but it's the resonant flavor of the spring. It's in the environment. Things are sour around us, and it carries the nature of the spring, the resonance of the spring. And sour goes to the liver. So that top one is the ones that you're familiar with, and I call that correspondence, pertaining, resonance, generation, also entering, right? The second one is what I'm introducing today, is that in the spring, the Yang-Qi and the fluids must go to the up and out, right, and open. And so we need to, if we want to stir up the Yang-Qi and move the fluids to the exterior to protect against wind, we want to use the spicy flavor. And this one is like a technical advice, which is logically based on the underlying dynamic. And why is that important? Because this second one is the one that's going to be much easier and much more effective to apply in cooking, right? That's where we're going. So you already know these dynamics now. I told you what the 4 flavors do. And now when you combine ingredients, you can already go ahead and do it, right? If you want to gather in more yang and fluids and bring them more inside, right? Say someone is over sweating, which flavor do you use? Sour, right? So we're already getting there, but we're going to give you much more detail. Okay, so is it in the Neijing? Yes. And this is a passage that always used to confuse the hell out of me until I realized what it was talking about. So later on in the Neijing, liver desires dispersal. Dispersal means moving up and out and pushing out. If you disperse the qi, it's by sweat. That's what dispersing means. When urgent, eat spicy to disperse it. Use spicy to tonify, sour to drain. Now, let's look at all these last sentences. Heart, summer. Use salty to tonify. Forget about spleen for a moment. Lung and autumn. Use sour to tonify. Kidneys, winter. Use bitter to tonify. The seasonal dynamic flavors are the tonification flavors, which really means the tonifying the dynamic of the season, right? Bitter makes things go in and down, which is what happens in winter. Spicy makes things go up and out, which is what happens in spring. But interestingly, the flavors that we associate, the entering flavors, are all the draining ones, which is kind of interesting, right? It's in the Neijing. You can go and read it yourself. That we say, oh, well, the flavor of the liver is sour, right? So we should eat more sour if you've got a liver problem. But we didn't realize that in the Neijing it says that's the draining flavor. Very interesting. I think a clearer way to think about it is actually not thinking about the organs so much, it's thinking about the seasonal dynamic. If you want to make things go up and out in the spring, to boost that function, to tonify that seasonal dynamic, you use spicy to make things go up and out. But the opposite of that would be sour. So if you want to drain that function, if you want to drain the function of going up and out, or reduce that function, you use the opposite, sour. Interestingly enough, it's totally the opposite in autumn, right? Sour is now the tonification, spicy is now the draining. And it's the same opposition in winter and summer too. So summer is salty to tonify, bitter to drain. Winter is bitter to tonify, salty to drain. So you've got these integrations. Now, something I don't have time to go into today, but I go into briefly. I've got a free talk online. I'll give you details of it, which is the same talk, but longer. You can derive the entire Schengen curse cycle from this. So if you ever wonder why the Schengen curse cycle is that, you can derive it precisely from this. And it works with the spleen in there, which we'll have to put in, but it's more complicated and I don't have time to go into it today. But it does work. It's amazing. The Schengen curse cycle comes from this. And it's something we can experience and understand when we understand all the bits that fit together. Oh, God. Okay. Oh, no, we've got till 11, haven't I? 9:30 to 11. Oh, I've got plenty of time. Great stuff. Okay, so this is what we're contrasting, corresponding dynamics versus underlying dynamics, okay? So in a sense, differentiating these two 5-element conceptions is something I'm giving you as a talk as practitioners, because it's really useful. I wouldn't go into all of this, because it's a little bit confusing too, to the public, because they don't know anything about 5 elements. I don't even mention the 5 elements quite often. I'll just talk about these underlying dynamics, Sheng, Jiang, Shou, Tsang, because we don't, just to know what flavor makes things go up and out, and what season do you need it, you don't need to get into the 5 elements. I love the 5 elements. It's just one of the things that we can do is make things as simple as possible to get people to be able to use them quickly as possible, right? And you know, I think that quite often when you look at introductory books to Chinese medicine, or when we try to talk about Chinese medicine to people, they often do the same thing. I love all the introductory books, they're great, but they often do the same thing. They start by defining all of the most exotic terms, right? Qi, yin, yang, jing, qi, shen, whatever, right? They go through and they define everything. Now, if someone is skeptical of Chinese medicine, or not that interested, they're going to give up. They don't want to read definitions of a whole pile of things they're just not interested in. And I think that we teach it backwards a little bit. I think we start with this core stuff, which is immediately understandable. You don't need to buy into anything. There's no one that's going to argue with you that spicy makes you sweat. It's just known, right? And then you teach this information, and then that enables people, if I want to go deeper, now you go into deeper concepts because you've got the appetite to learn it. And you realize that actually, if we really, really want to understand this, we're going to have to get into those beautiful philosophical concepts as well. You know? But so I think that we teach it backwards sometimes. So I've been teaching Yang-Sheng for the last 10 years, and this is the way I teach. And you know, I will teach in a way that's quite technical. You're going to see some of the things, the way I talk about things in a moment. So if you're interested in Neijing, Suwen 22, you can read it yourself. It's all in there. And sorting out these flavors has been really important to me because I knew that there was this high level of cooking that my doctor in Taiwan did, but he always found it difficult to explain to me. So I'd seen it, but it exists and it's there. And when you realize it, you look at all Chinese cooking, it's blending all these flavors, sour, spicy soup, sweet and sour pork, right? They're not just there because, oh, the Chinese are a bit weird and they like putting sweet and sour things together. No. Sweet, you'll find out later, tonifies fluids and qi. Sour gathers in. If you're dry, you have sweet and sour. And you have that in the autumn. What you'll find is plenty of sweet and sour flavors within the autumn, sweet and sour herbs that are used and if you want to come to my stand for the RCHM downstairs, you can have a sweet and sour drink later. It's, again, more delicious than it sounds. Okay, so if we're comparing these flavors in the Neijing, here's, just to reiterate, here's the elements on the left, wood, fire, metal, water. Tonification flavor is the same as the promoting of the flavor of the season, spicy, salty, sour, bitter. And the draining flavor is on the middle, and as you can see that this generating flavor or entering flavor, the one you're familiar with, corresponds to the draining flavor. Tonification flavors promote the Sheng, Jiang, Shou, Tsang. And I would say that the draining or pertaining flavors, they resonate with the element. It's still useful to use that thinking, you know, but it's more of a correspondence thing. It's more of a resonating thing, bringing in the feeling, the energy of. Question?
I like this. Yeah, just an interesting observation. In the Middle East, you don't have very clear seasons like you have in the West. So what they do, most of the foods we used to eat combines the 5 flavors. This is a way to cut corners, okay? In a way, because the summer is very long, it's hardly any winter. So I remember, even the food that you eat, you burn a bit to make it bitter, and then you have sour taste on salads, you know, like we do. And so you try to combine a lot of flavors most of the times when you eat. Does that cover the kind of climate?
I've got lots of things to say. There's so much to say about that, but what I would say is that if you look at, so my teacher, Chinese medicine practitioner, but he's also an excellent chef. And he's cooked for me so many times, I'm so lucky. Very simple, but amazingly blended flavors, and he will generally have all the flavors represented on the table in every meal. However, the balance of them will change according to what the season is and what's going on. And so it'll either be warmer or cooler, there'll be more sour flavors, more salty flavors. But what we're talking about here is not just the seasons, it's the entire physiology and pathology of human beings, because in herbal medicine, as you know, we use those 5 flavors to treat everything, combining them. And so what I mentioned is, you know, at the beginning, this cycle from cold to dark to hot and light and back again is fundamental to what we are. It is the most essential thing. It's not just an extra thing that I always love, like the Wikipedia entry on circadian rhythms, you know? It's just like, it's kind of sparse. There's a few things. Oh, this might happen at this time, whatever. No, this is chapter 1 of physiology. This is who we are. We are built to respond, to not die by getting too cold or too hot, or too dry or too damp. That's what we are. So putting all the flavors together, it addresses all the physiology of the body, and we need all of them. You know, and there's interesting discussions about how much bitter has been taken out of, you know, of our diet, with, you know, because people don't want to buy bitter things and stuff like that. Have some Chinese bitter melon. Bitter melon soup's delicious, by the way. Okay. So, right, let's go on. So, as I was saying, this, the tonification flavor is the flavor which promotes the underlying dynamic of the season. It promotes a clear effect that you can understand, and it's the most useful kind of understanding for Chinese dietary therapy, which we'll get into. So spicy, sour, salty, and bitter. Okay, so what we're going to do now, just to finish off, is I'm going to go through each of these 4 seasons, and I'm going to give you one recipe for each one, and applying this principle, right? So Sheng, this period is named the spring, named throw out the stale, heaven and earth both grow, and the myriad things flourish. So throwing out the stale, things accumulate over winter, kind of stagnate inside. And now we can actually, when things start to shake up and invigorate and we push them out, we can actually just release all this stuff, right? That's throwing out the stale. Heaven and earth both grow, it's pretty obvious. Plants grow and things start to flourish. When I do my full course, I go into all the different possible pathologies that you can have with things not going out enough, going out too much, getting stuck. These are all Sheng pathologies, and we go into detail about this word exterior release, which, by the way, doesn't get taught well enough for various reasons. Acupuncturists and herbalists should really understand this concept. Exterior release is this. It's facilitating the body. The body, we talked about what the exterior is, the skin and the muscles and the tissue, where that peripheral blood circulation goes. If there is disorder there, it can cause everything from muscle pain to headaches, to skin conditions, to neurological conditions, and understanding how to release the exterior, which is not just putting a needle in large intestine 4, because that's like, you know, the one that's mainly indicated. How many times they say, oh, large intestine 4 promotes the sweat, you put a needle in it, nothing happens, right? It's much more than that, right? Releasing that exterior is the experience we can feel. When you go for a jog and you have a sweat, it's like, oh, I feel just a little bit better. When you have a cry, because crying is the way the lungs release the exterior. You feel calmer afterwards. You release this exterior. Some people have not had their exteriors released properly for 20 years, and they're the kind of people, when you put a needle in and you manage to get that exterior release in the clinic, and then a chronic problem they've had for like 20 years just goes away. So funnily enough, you know, and just doing vigorous exercise may not do it, because we need to, I'm not getting into it. All of the different aspects of exterior release. I can talk for ages about it, but it's a really important concept to know. And so these are all of the problems that you can have with inadequate exterior release. Either having not enough Yang-Qi or fluids in the exterior, or having too much Yang-Qi or fluids trapped in the exterior. All of these things. And we could too often go to the organ to think about trying to fix it through the organ, but actually what we want to do is fix it with the exterior. Acupressure is particularly a great way to do it, and there's an acupressure routine I teach which initiates an exterior release, and you can really feel it. So the most important herbal medicine formula for releasing the exterior, it's probably the most important herbal medicine formula in Chinese medicine. If I got the, no, I actually didn't put it here. The most important one is called Guizhitan. So if you're a herbalist, you will have heard of this. It's cinnamon decoction. It's 5 ingredients: cinnamon, which is, what flavor is cinnamon? Spicy. Okay. Ginger, what flavor is ginger? Spicy, right? So we've got 2 spicy herbs in there, which are going to do what? Just make you sweat, right? And sweating is very closely related to releasing the exterior. Then we've got licorice root and red date. If you want to see those, I've got them downstairs in my stand. They're both sweet and they nourish fluids. And so what you have is you've got sweet things which build the fluids up, and then you've got spicy things which push them out. And that's releasing the exterior. We have a 5th one, which is sour and bitter and cool, opposites. That actually stops you oversweating, but it also gathers the fluids together so you can have an effective sweat. Because you can sweat and not release the exterior. So we want to create an effective sweat. This formula is incredibly important because it has so many of the principles of Chinese herbal medicine in there, and it can treat hundreds of different conditions. I use it all the time. Now, you can just replace those ingredients with ones that are similar. So I can make a sweet warm congee. Congee is rice in the water it's cooked in, basically, but it's rice, which doesn't make it sound very nice, but rice, about 1 part rice to 7 to 8 parts water, and you cook it until the rice is completely disintegrated. The stomach loves it. They're usually given to very sick people, but it's a very good breakfast, it's a very good everyday recipe, and you can put anything in it. So it's bland to start with, slightly sweet with the rice, but bland, and you can take it off in any flavor direction. So you can take it off in a sour direction, spicy, salty, sweet. So this is a sweet, warm congee. Congee has rice in it. Rice is sweet, tonifies your qi and fluids, and there's a bunch of hot water in it. So it's also already got warmth and it's already got fluids. So it's putting a bunch of qi, warmth, and fluids into the stomach. The warmth of the fluids already creates a steaming effect out to the exterior before you put anything else in. But to enhance it, we can put our ginger and cinnamon in there. And ginger and cinnamon then percolate it out and invigorate it out to the exterior to have that slight sweat to create the exterior release. But the thing is, because you've got so much fluid generation in there to begin with, you're not going to oversweat, because unless you've got a lot of heat in the body already, but you're replenishing what you're putting in. And that is a herbal formula in dietary form. And can you see how that is way more dynamic than just a list of ingredients and then making up random recipes from them? This is creating a very specific effect. But it's also one of the benefits of it, and what the greatest dietary therapy is, you don't need to just have it when you've got a problem. You can have it to maintain, and it's just a nice thing. I mean, you know, it's something that you can have every day too. Right? So it's not, you know, the difference between this and, say, more technical herbal medicine is that I might give you some herbs which you really shouldn't have every day, right? But this is just food, but it's still doing a similar principle. So that's what what else I put in there? Did I put? Yeah, sweet potato. You can put sweet potato is brilliant, just as that nourishing sweet thing to put in to create that sweet flavor. Something you can put honey in there as well, but actually sweet potato is sweet enough, to be honest. But it depends on what you like. There is the recipe. So I'm not sure if the notes get sent out or not, but if you need any recipes, you can email me. I'll give my email address at the end of it. Okay, so on to summer. So, because we've got limited time, I'm going to run through these now. So, sure, yeah. By the way, I've got a free video on my website, yeah. If you email me as well, if you lose any of these recipes, I'll email you back with the recipes. Okay, so summer. This period is named flowering and flourishing. Pretty obvious, right? Why that is. Everything's blooming. Chi of heaven and earth intersects. Really interesting that summer is actually about union. Winter is about separation, right? Because in summer, the warmth comes down, steams the fluids out the ground, warmth and fluids come together. Same in us. Winter, heat goes away, fluids sink into the ground. Winter and autumn is dry, by the way, not damp. Summer and spring and summer is damp. Complicated. We live in a cold, damp climate, I understand. But if I asked you now, everyone put your hand up if your skin gets dry in the autumn or winter. We've got about half the room put their hand up. Put your hand up if your skin gets dry in the spring or summer. No one put their hand up, right? So that's because these seasonal dynamics, if you understand them, that's why autumn is dry, because the fluids are condensing and going down and in. Why does our skin get dry? Well, because there's less fluid in the air, but also because the fluid is coming from the exterior and going internal. And so if we don't have sufficient supplies of fluid, there's not enough remaining on the outside. Okay. 10 things flower and bear fruit. Okay. So now, what are the pathologies of summer? Well, oversweating, undersweating. Well, you can see that actually, if all the fluids in the opposite of autumn, they move to the outside and there's not enough inside, you can get a cold middle, you can get diarrhea in the summer because everything's on the outside. It's not nourishing the spleen anymore. But the big thing is summer heat, right? The word for summer heat is also the word for heat stroke, 中暑. And a homemade rehydration remedy that you can find online, not just online, it's just the standard rehydration remedy is water with salt and sugar. And my teacher, who's a practitioner in Taiwan, hot climate, the number of times a patient has come in with some symptom and he just sits them down and gives them a glass of water, puts some salt and sugar in it, and he says, that's it, now go home. Because it's just simply they just didn't replenish their fluids. And so this is very profound. Now, we live in a cold climate, so it doesn't happen so often to us. But if you live in a hot climate, like, this is a very important herbal remedy. So this is the first thing to say. Now, as I mentioned, this is all verified by the way the Chinese cook, what they eat at different times of year, and their festivals particularly. So in the summer, you have the Dragon Boat Festival. This is actually a picture of when I participated in the Dragon Boat Festival. I don't think we won when I was in my 20s. And they eat this food, which is called the zongzi, which is a kind of a rice pyramid. And it's, what's it made of? Glutinous rice, peanuts, egg, and meat. They're salty and sweet, they boost qi and fluids, and they're warming. We're in summer, why are we warming up? Why are we boosting qi and fluids? Because you're going to go in the Dragon Boat Festival, and you're going to go and row, and you're going to need to replenish them, right? Now, not everyone's going to do a Dragon Boat Festival every day in summer. Well, in ancient times, you go and work in the fields, right? All day long, in the heat. You need that replenishment of your qi and fluids. Calories, right? But by the way, what does calories mean? Calor, warm, right? Warming. So calories are warming, right? There is a sense that not just the property of warming, like say ginger has a property of warming, but anything that's got high in calories will have a warming effect on the body too, right? I'm going down the rabbit hole in that one. Okay, so thing is, it's summer. So what happens if we warm up in summer? We're going to sweat too much. What is this cooked in? It's cooked in lotus leaf or bamboo leaf, which is cooling. So they imbue the cooling property of the leaf into the warming rice. And this is one of the most common, popular, festival dishes. Everyone in China knows, everyone loves it. Not a single Chinese person I know knew that. I realized, well, apart from the Chinese doctors I know, as soon as I learned herbal medicine, I realized, oh, okay, I get it. That's the property of lotus leaf. That's why they do it that way. there are a lot of customs that Chinese people do, and they might not know exactly why. But once you learn herbal medicine, you realize it. And by the way, once I learned Chinese and learned herbal medicine, it is a fantastic amount of fun just walking around China or Taiwan. Going into 7-Eleven is amazing because there's a pile of different drinks and ingredients and snacks, and they've all got the properties, and you look at the labels and you can work out what herbs are doing. There's cooling drinks for the summer, there's nourishing ones. For the herbalists out there, in 7-Eleven you can get 4 different varieties of Su Tang as a drink. Su Tang is the nourishing formula for menstrual issues, particularly for female conditions. And so that's amazing. There's another talk I did which is just all about that, all about the great ingredients you can find in Taiwan in the shops. Okay, so autumn. This period is named bountiful and balanced. Heaven is high, wind is pressing, earth chi is bright. I don't have time to go into why those sentences are. A little bit more esoteric, those ones. But what's happening is that the chi and the fluids are condensing and congealing, and the lung function of diffusing and descending becomes really important, right? And that's powered by the zong qi of the lung. So what happens is that everything is out here, your yang qi and your fluids, in this kind of cloud in the exterior. And now in autumn, the fluids in the air drop into the earth. The air is now dry. In summer, you may have depleted your fluids because it's hot, so you're already dry as well. And your fluids now need to go in and down, which leaves the skin dry. 3 reasons why you're dry. Have you ever wondered why autumn is dry? That's why. Those 3 reasons. So what we need to do is we need to moisten in autumn. And moistening here is very closely related to the mucous membranes. The temperature, the fluid balance of the mucous membranes is incredibly important for immunity. That's why we get coughs and colds in autumn, and that's why we talk about moistening in autumn. So it's moistening is one thing, but we also need to gather this zong qi, because as all the fluids come in, they really need to be circulated and pushed around the body, otherwise they congeal and stick. And the zong qi we gather in the lung. It's very closely related to sweat. So if we sweat too much, we lose our zong qi, but it's also a sign that we don't have enough zong qi to hold it in. In classic TCM terms, it's the daytime sweating, it's the qi deficiency sweating that we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about. We need to gather that sweat in. What flavor do we use to gather the sweat in and the qi in? Sour, right? So this is the pathology that you'll get in one of the pathologies, in many different ones. One of the main ones that you'll get: daytime sweating, oversweating with exercise, fatigue, loss of voice, weak voice, tired after speaking, pale. Many types of long COVID are this, including the type of long COVID that I had, which I managed to find a way to solve. Right? After I had COVID, I had to cancel Zoom meetings because just speaking for 20 minutes or even like 10 minutes would just completely floor me for a couple of days because I had no zong qi. So the good news is that we can use sour plum drink, sour herbs. So there is, seem to have lost some. Anyway, the main ingredients, the sour ingredients, are wumei, umeboshi plum, and shanjia hawthorn fruit. You can also use hibiscus. Did I put? No, lost a couple of them. There's also often used gansao, which is licorice root, which is sweet and nourishes qi and fluids, and chenpi, which is aged tangerine peel. I have all of those herbs, which you can see and touch and feel and play around with and taste downstairs, as well as example of the commercial variety of sour plum drink, which you can find. I told you can find all this stuff. You can find this in average shop in, corner shop in China, Taiwan. And we're making it downstairs too. So we're making it in a tea, add a little bit of honey. You can really experience the sourness. You can really experience the gathering of the zong qi downstairs. Again, here's the recipe. And if you email me later, I will give you this recipe. Okay, so last one is winter storage. water freezes in the ground, hardens, and make the will as if hidden, as if concealed. So this is the picture of what we want. Now, what's interesting is that we can get too cold on the outside because we don't have enough Yang-Sheng there, by the way. But interestingly enough, one of the major pathologies of the winter is inflammatory heat inside, in the bowels. Because now all this warmth has come inside and everything's closed down, you're not regulating the qi through sweating. You're not regulating the fluids and temperature through sweating so much anymore. It's all through bowels and urination, which means if that's not functioning very well, you're going to get lots of heat flaring. So you can get inflammatory bowel conditions, GI conditions, all the lower jiao kind of inflammatory stuff, so UTIs, that kind of stuff, can all get worse in the winter, interestingly. So we need to facilitate that to go out. We need to keep ourselves warm, but we need to also facilitate all that stuff to go out. So one of the key flavors in dietary therapy is actually the bland flavor, because the bland flavor can leach damp and heat out of the body while not depleting the body. So here is a 8-treasure congee, which you can make. They have all these recipes called 8 treasure, but it's always different 8 treasures. And you'll see that here are the different ingredients and their functions. Nourishing qi, you've got rice. All beans nourish qi, or legumes, so like mung beans and dooky beans. Ran Job's tea is a very important ingredient because it nourishes qi, drains damp, and drains heat. It's really, really useful, and it's a food. It's like Chinese barley. Hongzao, which we've got downstairs, they're red dates. Goji berries. So nourishing yin, we've got goji berries, and we've got black sesame. Draining damp and heat, we've got all the beans and the ran, drain damp and heat. And then we've got Chenpi, aged tangerine peel, which is also in this, which facilitates flow. What it means is it just kind of moves the spleen and stomach qi and stops decongesting. So you can see here, this is all treating this cocktail of heat and cold and dampness and dryness that we have inside during the winter. And this can kind of sort everything out, as well as being a really delicious dessert dish as well. So, by the way, that's really, really important, making your dietary therapy delicious. And my teacher would always say that if you make it delicious, the effect will be good. And if the effect is good, you should have made it delicious. Otherwise, it's not going to be a good effect. And those two things go together, which is the opposite of the way we think. There's that phrase that says everything good in life is, fattening, immoral, or whatever it is, right? But in Chinese thinking, actually, if it tastes good, it's good for you. So that is the recipe there. Again, I will email it to you if you want. Oh, and by the way, if you've got the, I can't remember which one, but I think this one was in an BAcC edition of BAcC at one point. I wrote an article about the winter for BAcC. I can't remember because I wrote one for the RCHM journal, one for BAcC. One was autumn, one was winter. Okay.
Did you list the summer recipe?
Summer, I didn't put a recipe, well, yeah, it wasn't a recipe, but it was this. It gives you the constituents, yeah. Okay. So, pretty good. That's under 90 minutes. You've got time for questions. Yeah, I just want to give you a couple more things while we finish. So that's the summary there. What I want to say is, in this short space of time, you now know what those 4 flavors do, plus the sweet one, which basically boosts qi and fluids. Okay, I didn't have enough time to go into hua, into transformation, into hua is the 5th seasonal dynamic, which means transformation, and it's the spleen, and it's either late summer or it's in every season. I don't have enough time to go into that. But those 4 ones which model the seasonal dynamics, you now know what they do. You now know when you put something sour, what that does in your dish, and if you add something salty to it or something sweet to it, you can kind of start to figure these things out. And you also know what your body's supposed to be doing in each season. You can think about your patients, like say they're an over sweater, and they're coming into autumn. well, that's going to get worse because you really need to start consolidating sweat in autumn. Otherwise, things are going to get bad. You can start to predict things. You can get to the highest level of Chinese medicine, which by the way, at the end of chapter 2 of the Neijing, it says that the highest physician is the one that can 治未病, which means treat the illness that is not yet manifested. And then they have that famous phrase of like treating someone when the illness has started is like forging weapons after the war has started, or digging a well after you're thirsty. So there's that famous phrase, right? But we can do the 治未病, right? And we can start predicting it. So I'm going to come to questions in a moment. I just want to do a couple of little plugs. Firstly, we're in the process, we're almost getting this set up at the College of Integrated Chinese Medicine in Reading. Myself and Danny are doing we're doing a dietary therapy course, a year long. Myself and Danny are doing different aspects of the Chinese stuff. So he's doing his take on Chinese dietary therapy, a bit more foundational, and I will be doing all of this logic, but going through all of the loads of practical examples, loads of ingredients, and all that kind of stuff. And Rebecca is doing the Western stuff. So that's going on at Kickham. If you go to their website shortly, there's already a page there, but not a place to book. We're just getting it all set up. But if you look for that, and you can always contact me to ask about it. Just want to have a quick, just something to say. I'm also the president of the RCHM, as I said, and a BAcC member. We are here today downstairs. If you're interested in studying herbal medicine, please come and have a chat with us, because we're all herbal medicine enthusiasts. The main thing that we really want to talk about is that the importance of doing a course which has got sufficient standards to it, which is one. We have an accreditation process, just a little bit like BArB accredits acupuncture. We have an accreditation body that accredits herbal medicine, and we don't do that to make it more difficult for people to study. I am a herbalist. I want people to be able to train and start and get going. You can see I'd like you guys to get going with these principles and these culinary herbs as soon as possible. We have the accreditation process firstly to make sure that there's good student satisfaction on the courses, to make sure they've got a good clinical component on the courses, and to be able to learn to practice safely and legally, because these are internal medicines and there's complex law around it. And by coming on a good course and then coming into the RCHM afterwards, you are protected, but you are protecting the future of herbal medicine too, because there are people who are worried about untrained people giving herbal medicines out there, even though we're not statutorily regulated. And we know behind the scenes, we talk to the government, we talk to the MHRA, we talk to the DHSC. The more people who come into higher standards organizations, the less worried they are. The less people who are in those organizations, the more worried they are. And if you want to help us have a future for herbal medicine, I encourage you to come and have a chat with us about our courses. So we've produced a pamphlet here, which you can pick up at the desk today. But there's a whole pile of benefits. I won't go through them all at the moment of being an RCHM member as well. And it's a great community, and there's a lot of RCHM members here today. Charlie, speaking in the other room, he's a great RCHM member. It's a family, actually. We've got a really great community to join too. So I won't go through all of these now. I'll just go straight to questions, so we've got enough time for those. So, there's a microphone coming.
Yeah, some of these ingredients are not very hard to get if you're not ordering herbs. Can you give us some Western herbs in cooking that we use that can be practically applicable to the desired effect that these ones do, please?
Yeah, so I mean, the way I teach is, so if you study Chinese herbal medicine, why do we use Chinese herbs? Are they superior to ones that are grown over here? The reason why we use them, a couple of reasons. Some of them are difficult to replace. Some of them are they're kind of unique. The other thing is that there are thousands of years of practice and history and understanding behind those herbs, which means we can fit them in and really be precise. So the way I teach Chinese dietary therapy is I'll give you all of the Chinese culinary ingredients so that you can understand how precise you can be and you can experience how precise you can be. And then we can also try and then substitute them afterwards. But my belief is you can't understand what you're trying to substitute until you experience it, until you play around with it. And so Chinese ingredients, I don't get paid by them, but Phoenix have started their own culinary range called Vital Herb Nutrition. So if you're not a herbalist, you can go there and you can order all of the most important culinary herbs directly. You can get those in the Chinese supermarket anyway. The reason why I mentioned Phoenix is they're one of our approved suppliers, and I can vouch for their quality and their safety. So you don't know what you're getting in the Chinese supermarket, but in Phoenix you'll get the quality ingredients. So they are obtainable, but what I recommend is play around with them and experience these ones today, hawthorn fruit and umeboshi plum. Come and experience it today, the sourness of that. Now, if you feel you can match that with a Western ingredient, brilliant. Grapefruit is sour and bitter, you know. Vinegar. Most of the ingredients, good news is most of the ingredients, I mean, we can make all these flavors with, okay, actually, in response to your question, this is what I want to answer. Flavor first. So I haven't gone through all the different ingredients that can be of these flavors. But just think of the flavor first, and that will get you the effect. Now, there may be like better or worse things, more specific things to achieve more complex things. Sour, main flavor is vinegar. That's the big one, but also like sour fruits and things like that. Salty is salt, right? And savory things, and umami. Sweet is obviously sugar, but then honey and sweet potato and sweet fruits and sweet vegetables and things like that. So, what have we got? Bitter. Bitter is vegetables, bitter vegetables. And things like cacao and chocolate and things like that is also bitter. And then you've got, what the last one? Spicy, right? So the most important Chinese herbs for spicy are also ones we have over here. Spring onion, ginger, cinnamon, all of those. Every herb you use to make mulled wine are all Chinese herbs. Star anise, fennel seed, cardamom, clove, spicy and warm. But they're all you know, regular herbs over here. So all those ingredients, you're ready to go. You can blend all your flavors and you can have all the effects. Oh, sorry.
A lot of things that are stimulating, like caffeine and
Yeah.
things like that, are also really bitter in flavor.
Yeah.
How do you explain that when the stimulating gives you more of a shen, you know, the summer effect, but the flavors coming?
Okay. What does coffee also make you do?
Go to the toilet.
What direction is that?
Well, that's down, obviously.
So does ginseng, which is also stimulating, make you go to the toilet?
I haven't had that experience
Oh,
where I go
no.
to the toilet. No.
It doesn't,
No.
right? So the bitterness of the coffee goes down, and it makes you urinate more, makes you go to the toilet more. One of the interesting things is that part of storage, winter, is filling. When we fill up, when our bowels are filled up, we will feel like we need to go to the toilet, right? So there is an aspect of stimulation which is filling, tonification, which is filling. And so when the GI tract is full up, then we can actually go down. So there is like a connection there. But in general, the stimulating aspect of coffee will be more uprising, but the bitterness will be down.
Got it. So the stimulant isn't tied to the flavor.
Slightly tied to sweet in terms of, so the word tonifying, if you have a tonifying herb, it's a stimulating herb, right? Or very often, it's quite, like, every Chinese person will know the experience of eating something that's too tonifying. The word tonify is in common parlance in Chinese cooking. So people would have had like a dish and it's just way too much ginseng or something, and they feel wired and uncomfortable and jittery, right? And that's tonifying. A lot of the tonifying herbs also happen to be sweet. So that, and something somehow related to adaptogens and things like that. I'm not so clear on all the constituents of them, but not all tonifying herbs are sweet. So sorry if I'm going round and round, but yeah, it's a bigger question. I can talk to you afterwards about it and break it down a little bit more clearly, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Hello, thank you for the informative presentation. Just a quick question. With the impact of sodium on many underlying conditions, talk a little bit about the replacement of salty with umami and the role it plays in the... re-education or reinvention of the classic wuxing theory in terms of the flavors, and how umami is now becoming a much more relevant taste for the kidneys. Thank you.
So I think I would actually say that I'm not sure if you, well, there is somewhat you can do a replacement with umami. And umami is a huge subject, and I teach about it, trying to figure it out, what the difference between salty is and umami. You can't wholly replace it. The main thing I would say is that once you're on the lower level of Chinese dietary therapy, or you just got a list of ingredients and you're kind of combining them together and hoping it does something, it's completely different from the dynamic aspect of what I'm talking about here. So if we're worried about, say, salt content increasing blood pressure, well, we know how to diagnose what that blood pressure is. We know that might be liver yang rising or whatever it is, but even more than that, and this is something I really go into, and it's the Shang-Hanlin logic. If you can sweat, if you can pee, if you can poo, and if you can take in fluids, most of the time you'll get better. And that's just summarizing the Shang-Hanlin in a sentence, right? So this also, we can relate this here. So the sweating aspect is all about spring and summer, and then the other two are about autumn and winter. And if those are free-flowing, the body can maintain its not just its temperature and fluid balance, but also the pressure in the body. And blood pressure is very much related to that pressure. So if you've got a trapped exterior, it's not releasing, everything is going up and out in a natural way because it needs to go up and out. We need to have that, but it's not able to go out. So it's trapped. We release the exterior, blood pressure comes down. Maybe the salt in the diet isn't so much of an issue anymore, you know?
So should we be drinking mulled wine in spring and not
Well, actually, sorry, the question is, should we be drinking mulled wine in spring and not in summer? I love the question because you're applying the knowledge in this way. And that's what we need to do. We need to just take it and ask these questions and think them through. So one of the answer will be that the lighter, spicier stuff would be better of the mulled wine ingredients. By the way, mulled wine, have it without the wine. It's delicious. Yeah. You have those in spring, but there are ones like, for example, clove, which is just more straight internal warming, which is better in winter. So we don't need to necessarily internally warm so much in spring. We need to invigorate it and go out. So the difference between fresh ginger and clove would be warming inside, fresh ginger would be pushing it to the outside. So yeah, but yeah, it's a good question. Great, okay. Wow, we managed to get everything done in time. So these are my contacts. So if you go to danmedicine.com Yang-Sheng course, this talk I've given in a 2.5-hour version with some really cool stuff where we do derive the Sheng and Ke cycle, and I go into how to mathematically derive the yin-yang symbol, which is pretty cool too. So in addition to everything I've talked about today, so if you want to watch it again, you can. It's all up there for free. This is actually an advert for my year-long course, which I am recording. We're almost at the end of it. So if you do want to buy the recordings, I may make a facility of that available. If you want to email me, but I go into everything in a huge amount of depth every season. I go into all the methods of Yang-Sheng, including Qigong and dietary therapy and self-acupressure, all of these things. And contact me for any reason. Main thing is, come and have some sour plum tea at my table downstairs at the RCHM table and have a chat about herbal medicine. So thank you very much.